Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's class, which is titled Fully Feeling Our Traumas to Transmute Them. And when people are asking me about what the topic is, like different people even here in Ascent, they're like, what's the class about today? Fully feeling the trauma and to transmute it. They're like, what's the other class on? Like, or and the truth is that it's not a class for the faint of hearted. It's not and basically when we talk about trauma, and we're going to get more into it because we had a very interesting couple of classes on our semester, which we're on right now, which is our last class was just on releasing Jewish trauma on psychedelics and Judaism. And much of the healing happens when we actually go through and we allow the trauma of whatever it is that occurred to us to fully be felt in order to finally transmute it. So we're going to talk today more about that and what are things that we're not meant to transmute and things that we actually take on that we shouldn't be concentrating on, because it's not almost we could say our package. It's not our tikkun, to fix the world and to be involved in everything. So that's also a very interesting discernment that we need to have. And that is, how are you? If you could turn off that heat, that would be tremendous. Sorry, you just arrived, but thank you. Yeah. It's or there's a remote. Well, okay. Yeah, sorry guys. It's like I'm feeling this heat over here. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's jump in. This week's parsha is Parshat Bo. Bo means to approach, to come forth. And God says to Moshe, Bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh. Ki anich badeti et libo, I've made his heart hard. Leman shiti ototai ele bikirbo, in order for my signs to be revealed within his heart. Signs to be revealed within his heart. Someone asked me a question before we delve deeper into what Bo means. What is ototai? What are these two signs that God is showing, that wants to show within Pharaoh's heart? The manshiti ototai ele bikirbo. What are these signs essentially? These wonders, and why is Moshe asked to do this, to stand up, to this mighty whatever, like Darth Vader, right? And he has to stand up to that. It's not an easy thing. So the Zohar asks this question and says, why does it say Bo and not Lech? It should say Lech, go to Pharaoh, right? Not Bo el Paro. Bo el Paro means to approach him, to come to him, to approach him. So the Zohar says that God said to Moshe, Bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh, because I am coming along with you to Pharaoh. And the Zohar explains, when Moshe saw who Pharaoh was on his spiritual level, he got scared, because he's called Paro Atanim in the book of Yechezkel. It says the mighty serpent that is there on the right by the Nile River. And Moshe was frightened. He said, how could I go to Pharaoh? Right? Who am I? Which he already was asking that in the two parsha ago's. He was saying, Mi anochi, who am I that I should go to be the leader? And he was questioning himself, right? He was self-doubting himself. And now at this point, Moshe, Hashem says to Paro, Bo el Paro, come to him, because now you have the strength, you have the power to be able to transmute him. And the Zohar says that this whole battle is basically a battle of not just two people, not a battle of nations, but it's a battle that we have inside of us. How are you? Welcome. It's a battle that we have inside of us. And that battle is the battle of Paro and the battle of Moshe. And what's the who is Paro and who is Moshe? So first, Paro is the letters Ha'oref, which means the nape. Paro is Ha'oref, the nape. And what is the nape, right? The back, basically the back of the neck, is a spiritual. The Arizal calls this part of the realms of of creation, of all realms of creation, including our creation, physical creation, that the neck is a binder between the mind and the heart. It's a channel between the two. It's where the two worlds connect to each other. And when the mind is unable to facilitate what it knows and translate it to the heart, then there's what is called Mitzrayim, which is Mitzrayim, right? Which is the idea, which is Paro. Paro is called the neck, and he's there. He's basically Egypt, and his job is, what he does is he prevents us from communicating, which is why on Passover night we communicate. The mitzvah is vigadeta. Right, sipul yetziat Mitzrayim, to say over the story, to express it. Because what happens when we're in a state of constriction? We're in a state of fight or flight, state of trauma. What happens then? Are we able to communicate? Are we able to raise our voice? Are we able to stand up to the perpetrator? Are we able to, to fully explain what it is that we're going through? We can't do that because our mind is like, it's right. Exactly. The mind is saying, yes, yeah. And there's that obstruction. That obstruction is where these two worlds are unable to connect to each other. So the famous psychologist Sigmund Freud actually was visited by the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, visited him in Vienna. I believe it was 1927. It was before the war, First World War. He visited him because they actually spoke, and they had many dialogues because as you know, a lot of the Hasidic philosophy is incredibly rich and deep in terms of its emotional and psychological well-being. Like, just as a side note on that, Viktor Frankl's work, right? He was going to shelve his work, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent emissaries. It was also in Vienna, to encourage him to continue his work. So a lot of psychology that we have today is based on logo therapy and a lot of behavioral therapy, whatever, and a lot of that came from our ability to choose between good and bad, our ability to transmute, our ability to reframe, our ability to make meaning, which is the whole premise of Viktor Frankl's work, is lago means meaning in Latin, and our ability to place meaning in the struggle that we're going through. And much of Hasidic work is really about that. But anyways, pre-Viktor Frankl, and we could say, that school, there was Freud. So they had the conversation. And Sigmund Freud asked the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber, he asked him, what is Chassidut? What is Chassidus? Explain it to me. And he said to him, it's the study, or it's the process of binding our minds and our hearts, which is basically Tanya, right? The whole Tanya is about moach shalit al halev, that our mind is able to, we have the frontal cortex, we're able to think, we're able to discern, we're able to make the switch, is able to control our limbic system, our amygdala, our fight or flight, and we're able to make the correct choices, moach shalit al halev, and that is the main premise there. So he said that over to Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud said, the heart and mind should be merged together. That's impossible, right? He said it's impossible. Like, basically, he went deep into man's, right, ego and everything there, the dark secrets and things that are going on. And Jung took it even further, right, with our dreams are who knows what. And so man is a beast, man is an animal, right? So how could we bind these two parts of ourselves? So the Rebbe Yershab said, at least make a line of communication. And that's around where, the telegraph was out, right? The telephone was not out then, where we have the we have the technological reminders to remind ourselves that we can connect. We have, right, when the telephone first came out, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir of Radin, who wrote the Mishnah Berurah, said, now we can understand what the Mishnah says. You should know what is above you. There's an ear that hears you, an eye that sees you, right? They didn't yet have an eye that sees you. Nowadays we do, right? But he says there's an ear that hears you because now the telephone is out. So we could, it's not an abstract concept. It's, right? And now when we say that we're interconnected, try to say that in the past. 40 years ago, we're interconnected. We're all one. Like, yeah, what are you talking about? But like, when we really explore that, that is becoming more and more a reality, and that is the reality, the only reality which we're going to be going towards, right? So, anyways, to open up a line of communication, what is that line of communication? The line of communication is the line of connection between the heart and the mind. So how is that line opened, and how is that, we could say, coming out of Egypt really affected, right? Because this is like coming out of Egypt. It's coming out of Egypt on the cultural level, right? But it's really coming out of Egypt is on our physiological level, on our mental level, on our emotional level when we come out of Egypt. So what causes us to stay in Egypt, right? What is the Egypt really? So today's Hayom Yom, which is written every single day, there's a beautiful like nugget of goodness that's called Hayom Yom that actually the Rebbe wrote, and he writes like this. He says, Mitzrayim, Egypt, expresses constriction and limitation. The spiritual Egyptian exile is the animal soul's restricting and concealing the godly soul so severely that the godly soul is compressed to the degree that it is diminished and obscured. Basically, when we live just in the material realm and we think that that is it, then the godly soul, welcome. Then the godly soul does not have its breathing space, right? And that is Egypt. So what's Exodus from Egypt? Removes the constriction and bounds. The intellect in the brain illuminates the heart, bringing about fine character traits translated into actual practice. This is Hayom Yom, and this is like brilliant paragraph that so many philosophers have spoken about, and so many psychologists speak about, that basically Exodus from Egypt is our ability to choose within our minds, within our mind, the response that we are going to have. And then doing that over and over again until that becomes our character traits. and it translates into actual practice. So guess what? Egypt isn't like just a one-time thing. You're taken out and poof, you're out. The truth is, they went out of Egypt, but it took them 49 days. And then past that, they went, and then again, and it says that the Mount is called Yom Tzitcha Mitzrayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all of the days of your life. Until Mashiach comes, we are in Egypt, and we're constantly coming out of Egypt. And every single day is another level of Egypt that we're supposed to be coming out of, which is why we remember coming out of Egypt every single day. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to remember coming out of Egypt. Because coming out of Egypt is not just a cultural thing, it is a deeply personal thing, which is basically our life mission. It's not just a nice idea. So how do we practically do this, right? How do we practically do this? Or, manishma. Is a kif. So how do we do this, right? So in this parsha, we find another amazing episode. Great to have you. Another episode. So what's that episode? It is when God tells the people to bring the Paschal lamb. In other words, what's the Paschal lamb? Paschal lamb is the Pesach. You want to have the Pesach, you want to jump over the restrictions, you have to bring this lamb, the Paschal lamb, right? So what do? So the commandment was set forth on the first of the month of Nisan, right? Which actually is a beautiful little lesson on that, because it says that God commanded Moshe to say to the people, and he told it to the people then at the beginning. It says Kenasun, so they did. But Rashi, the commentator, said they didn't yet do it. They only did it 15 days later. Why is they Kenasu? La'agid lecha, to tell you that from the time of the Maaseh, they wanted to do it as if they did it. In other words, when you start something, it's not only when you do it that you get credit for it. You decided to now get up and to learn this, to get up on this at this time, to exercise. You decided to do that. Obviously, it's not like it's just an aimless like dream and you're not going to follow forth, but you're like, you know what? I'm deciding to do this. Kenasu. In God's eyes, you know what? Amazing. I believe in you. You got it. And then you have the power to do it. And then you have the power to do it. Exactly. So the first part is the decision to want to do it. The second part is to step into it. Now, that's not so easy. In other words, to actually get up at 5 and to put on your jogging pants and to actually jog, that's like putting things on the soil, what do you call it? You're testing it, really. That's not so easy. So that's what happened on the 10th of the day of Nisan, which is what happened. Finally, they had to go to the marketplace or wherever they got, which I always had the question, where are these lamb from? I thought they just had all these like plagues, right, going on. No, but they also, right, but you're saying it was theirs, but no, they weren't. They were slaves. How did they have, they were slaves. But anyways, the question that the commentators do ask. Anyways, there's always this secret, I don't know, marketplace for lamb. I don't know, wherever they got it from.
No, each family didn't have a Shevat.
No, but that was afterwards. That's not rechush, that's money. But this is lamb. No, but they had all these plagues, that Shechin, for example, got rid of the animals. Them. Anyways, forget. Let's leave the question for now.
If you're poor, you have one cow and one lamb. You have
no, but they got it from the Egyptians, and the idea is, where do they get it from? And who are fearing God kept it. Right. That's the answer. Therefore, you right. It says to be, yes. So, yeah. Which is, as Jewish people, we do take with us throughout history. We're like, well, even the people that it seems like they're nice to us, we're not sure, right? Which is also a little bit of an, like we carry on, like kind of like anxiety on that level, and which is anyways, we'll just get to that for a second, and for good reason in many ways. So on the 10th of Nisan, we were commanded to take that lamb and to parade it through this, not to parade it, just you bring it to your house, but you're walking through the streets, and who sees you? Your Egyptian taskmaster and his family and his cousins or the other people who you don't, and they're like, hey, Jake, where are you going with that, boy? And he's like, that's my lamb. I'm gonna slaughter it. So that's where he had to, right there and then, look at his oppressor in the face. I want you to pause. I want to pause on this for a second. To look at your oppressor in the face, you could take, it says you could take the Jew out of Egypt, you could take the person out of the problem, but you can't take the Egypt out of the person, right? Out of the Jew. In other words, the real slavery is the mental slavery. And it's not coming out as now I'm coming out. Yay. Actually, I heard an interview by Viktor Frankl, and he was talking about his time in the Holocaust. Again, and he mentioned that those people that came out physically but did not have the right perspective, they're like, they lived, but they didn't really live. Mm-hmm. But those that had the meaning, that they attributed meaning to what they were going through, and they saw some bigger reason in life that they are here for, they came out and they were successful. Now, for that Jew to look at the Egyptian, or Israelite to look at the Egyptian, right? And to hold the Paschal lamb, basically, which is his redemption. He's taking his redemption. He's basically saying, I want to be freed of you.
And it's their God.
It's their God, exactly. That's the whole issue. The issue is that the lamb is their deity, one of them. And to do that means to actually slaughter the deity, which is the hardest psychological thing possible. It's not like you're doing something like in the oppressor's house, like you're breaking their, no one sees you. Like, I hate this boss. I'm gonna I'm gonna throw stuff in the toilet. I'm gonna mess up his rug. So you're like, yeah, and when he looks at who did that, like, I don't know, right? Great, you just did something, but it's like you weren't a man, you're a woman to actually face him, say, not easy. So to do that called upon the greatest level of vulnerability possible.
Yeah.
To be able to be courageous enough and to have that belief that, kind of like also with Moshe, boil Pharaoh, go to Pharaoh, because if you're just doing it on your own, you cannot do it. You have to draw from meaning, from purpose, from a greater meaning, and that's Hashem. God is giving you this greater meaning in life, that he's directing you and he's taking you out from here, not only taking you out, but now he's going to be giving you the Torah. He's now going to be, giving, this incredible tool book, and transformation. Like now you're going to be a servant to the Creator, to Hashem, and not just a servant to man. So we're going to be, and it says like a servant of a king is like a king himself. So it's like now you're becoming like a king or a queen. So you're going from like the lowest place to the highest place, and it's a major transformation that happens, that of what? Of self-belief, the belief in oneself is the place where we transmute the trauma, the pain, when we're able to know that there's a greater purpose, then at that point, we become free. But we cannot do that unless we're fully embracing the pain. And that's exactly what happens on the Leila Seder, on the Seder night, which God brilliantly gave us this this holiday where it's like this amazing mixture of these two realms. Like on the one hand, we're slaves, avadim, we remember being slaves and the whole thing. We're recounting the slavery and we're talking about, but then you're free also. It's like these two things going on at the Seder night. And the truth is that you could only feel free if you really feel what being a slave is like. In other words, looking at yourself, at oneself deeply, and from there comes the healing. From there comes the transformation. According to the Arizal, the maror that we eat is actually chesed. It's on the Seder plate. It's actually it's gevuras, right? It's actually, I'm sorry, it's tiferet. It's this balance of the two, because we take something so intense, such as the slavery, but we chew on it. And according to the Arizal, when you chew on it, so at first it's bitter, but then you taste like the sweetness, and that sweetening now becomes the transmuting of the obstacle itself. And now the obstacle itself becomes transmuted into godliness, which the Arizal says Mitzrayim is Meitzar mi. It's the Meitzar of me, or it could be the Meitzar of Yam. Right, where we have Meitzar. So first of all, Meitzar Yam is like 50, right? It's 50 gates of Bina, and that's what corresponding to the name Elohim, which constricts, and that's Meitzar Mitzrayim, Meitzar Yam, right? It's like holding it and it's constricting it. But Meitzar Mi is breaking out of it from the place of the Bina to the place of Chochmah, which is Mi, right? Which now breaks it, which is that choice pattern that takes us out of the Mitzrayim, from the constriction into the openness, which is Mi. Look at who created this. Me, right? Who created this? When a person wonders and has the time to basically we're all slaves most of the time, even in holy things, even in endeavors, we're doing road and we're doing things, we're slaves to the system, to our schedule, and when we're unable to have the time to basically breathe, which it says that the people did not have the time to breathe. Basically, it says mikotze ruach ma'avodah kasha. They were in Mitzrayim. What was the Mitzrayim? The Mitzrayim didn't give them the ability to breathe a little bit in, which is again also where does breath, the Meitzar HaGaron. We spoke about that. We're unable to take in a deep breath into our chest and bring that that quietness, that mindfulness, that right into our, because we have to do mincha, we have to do this, we have to run here, it's like it's good to have what you're going to be. You have your set you have your set schedule, but when the set schedule, even in Kedusha, that's why the Rebbe said that we say taking out of Egypt, we say it twice a day, in the morning and at night. Why? Because in the morning, you're in a state of like clarity, could say holiness. Well, even there is that constriction that's there, and you have to come out of that constriction even more. Like there is a constriction of routine. It's a holy Egypt, and at night is the Egypt which is like the dark. It's the darkness, but it's coming out of Egypt, which we're always in the process of. And basically each and every day we come out of another level of Egypt. But the ability to come out of Egypt does not happen both on the night Shema and the day Shema, unless we are open and vulnerable to ourselves, to the truth, and face it, which is not so easy. And again, like I was saying at the beginning of this class, like a couple of people asked, so what are we going to talk about today? And I was like, well, fully feel the trauma to transmute it. And they're like, well, that's kind of intense. I think I'm gonna go to the other, that's like too intense. But you know what? That when you're able to face yourself, there's nothing more liberating and nothing greater in the world, because then you're free of your own expectations.
You're free of you.
Exactly, you're free of you. You're free of your own expectations, which is basically the majority, or everything is in our mind, right? Our existence and our own, play of what the world is.
That's why the lessons, you go out of you. I hear you. I don't hear me.
I was talking to these people this morning about this, like how like a lot of times, we like end up like giving a narrative, like we feel the discomfort, we feel like the emotion of something, and it could be something that happened in the past. We like, our problem is instead of like feeling it and being there, we like give it a narrative and we call it something and then we run away.
Yeah.
When like really it's not going to kill us if we let ourselves feel it without like telling it what it is or putting it in a box or giving it a narrative.
I'd like to read you actually because again, we had an amazing class on our psychedelics and Judaism course. And Madison was presenting on actually what trauma is. So if you guys would just listen over here, you know what? I think it's okay. I'm going to just share this quickly. I'll just have you guys have a quick look at this. We had this on our course. Okay, so trauma. So as you guys see this over here, this is Madison's work. She did a great job. Madison Margolin, who co-presented it with me. Trauma is the feeling of being unsafe. So Gabor Mate, who is a trauma expert, says trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. Again, not what happens to you, but what happens inside as a result of what happens to you. In other words, it's your interpretation of it, which for many people, basically, it's like we can't underestimate someone's trauma, and what they have gone through. And, you can't say, well, compared to this or that, for one of like my wife and I were speaking, like she really felt traumatized that we bought a certain shampoo like for a couple of years. For her, that was like something she was like felt like really hurt by. Yeah, one of my daughter was very sensitive, and that's the kind of soul that that she is, and came down to the world, and every soul is different.
That's nice shampoo.
She had, for her, well, that's one of the but basically, I don't know, we try to be parents, we try to be Rachel Udaf, she says, what gets confounded in the discourse is the difference between having an experience and having negative effects of that experience. Trauma is the negative effect.
Yeah.
So trauma lives in the body, meaning it manifests not only in our thoughts, dreams, memories, and feelings, but also in the health of our physical being, in our backaches, our ulcers, sleeping and eating habits, our brains, anxiety disorders. It is therefore in the body where we most often encounter and embrace our deepest brokenness or wounding. So a great book is The Body Keeps the Score. Tremendous book. I haven't read Gabor Mate's The Myth of the Normal, but anyways, there's different types of trauma, and what I think is interesting is PTSD, which is potentially life-threatening. So anyways, I don't want to necessarily go into all the details of that. We did that, and it was just fascinating to understand that in that context of the Jewish trauma. But so a lot of this is really freshly on my mind, and going into the parsha that we are in, it is exactly what we're called to do. Bo el Paro, to come to Pharaoh, means to ask ourselves, are we fully honest? Like, are we holding on to fears of expectations from somewhere, from someone, right? And it comes down to ourselves. What are we really expecting? Because no one else is going to give it to us from the outside. It comes from within. But that's exactly the point of freedom. That's the point. Like, are you able to be not yet there, but like yet have that positive approach and take that positive meaning? Again, that meaning, that point is where it's all at. That's that's where things get transmuted within that choice. And it's a very deep choice within oneself. Am I living the past? Am I living reality, or reality that I have held on to as the reality, versus am I now ready to live God's reality, and go beyond myself? And going beyond myself is basically ego death. It is. And that's what happened. That's what Pesach is. And that's what happened with those, with those, they took this land. They were like, God, man, I don't know why I'm doing this. I hope they're not gonna whip me, because remember, they got whipped. I hope that this boy is not gonna but they saw and they believed, well, God has got my back. Like, I saw that all these things are already happening. These things are there. Now it's just, right? In a davar talui el abid. Now it's really just me.
We need 10 miracles to go out of ourselves.
There were 9. It wasn't yet the 10th. This was gearing up to the 10th. But really, again, yes, the plagues were just as much for the Israelites as they were for the Egyptians. They weren't about the Egyptians. Really, the story is our story. It's like we're coming out of Egypt. That idea is that the Egyptians, that mentality is the enslavement mentality that keeps us stuck.
We believe in it.
That
we forgot we're above it.
We forgot that we were above it. Yeah. So to face it,
I try to convince my body to less eat. And each time I feel like hunger, I say, but you're not hungry. You drink a lot of water. You're not hungry. What? Is the animal so afraid that you won't give her food, so she need to praise it? You don't need that much food that we eat. I
right.
really work with
exactly. Well, so much comes along. Exactly. so much of exactly food and things that we need, the reliance, which is addictions and things like that, to alleviate, to soothe ourselves. And soothing is not necessarily a bad thing. It depends how much you soothe. But everyone needs to soothe. Like you see a little baby that they're born. That's the biggest trauma. Basically, we kind of remember that. You're coming into the world like, whoop, hello. Like it or not, boy or girl, here you are. Welcome to the world. Ta-da. Like, right?
They put me in
Okay. But
for a few days. I didn't know.
Why?
You remember?
so our
זה מעניין להגיד, it's interesting to לציין, שהמכה האחרונה, אחת לפני האחרונה היה חושך.
Totally darkness.
ואת החושך,
Mhm.
גם לא לכל היהודים הצליחו לשרוד.
זה היה בשביל שהיהודים הרשעים ימותו.
right.
Darkness
Interesting.
is the
Yeah.
hardest to survive.
נכון.
Very interesting. Yeah,
And
that's a
it's
great
all-
point.
it's the darkness זה הכי קשה.
Right.
And if we see the world, אם אנחנו רואים את
beautiful.
העולם שלנו,
חזק.
כמו, if we divide the world of all 6,000 שנה ל10, זאת אומרת שעכשיו אנחנו בחושך? נגיד? אם אנחנו מסתכלים על שעבוד מצרים, אם נגיד,
So I'm just gonna say what
darkness,
a very good point, amazing point. That Or said that this follows on the plague of darkness, which says not all of the Israelites survived. Actually, it says 4/5
Didn't make it.
didn't make it.
4 חמישיות, זה
In other words, it was a tough, we could call it evolutionary, level of survival there. That it's not everyone did survive, 4/5 did not. Only the ones that had that conviction. The conviction inside, and we're going to see in next week's parsha, when the conviction of going through the ocean, going through the sea, right? When you're going into the sea, you are believing that the sea is going to split, that Hashem, God has got your back.
נכון.
So they believe that so I want to share. Yes, so I want to share. We're just by a wedding, just so a beautiful wedding here at Shevat with now this is an amazing story. I just want to share it with this context. So he's a very, very nice guy that I became like friendly with here, and he made the commitment. Oh my God, and you guys got married.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we're gonna make a Shevat. Whoa. Amazing. So the whole idea of weddings is the connection of two opposites. But anyways, but this was really opposites, because the opposites were that he was here and he truly believed he was doing what he was meant to do. And he had complete faith that God is going to bring him his soulmate. And so what happened is that his now wife, as of tonight, her family won like 6 tickets to Israel, like on some like sweepstakes kind of a thing that they a raffle that they donated for. So they won 6 tickets to come to Israel, and they came here and they visited Tzfat, and they visited with a certain lady, and she was like, well, I think you'd be perfect. She saw the girl with him, and they went out, and it was like done deal. And that's how they met. You're like, how, what? That's crazy. But that idea, so I was talking to someone, a family member in the wedding before, like as the chuppah, the ceremony was happening. And I was like, what is so amazing about this is that he brought her here. His conviction, his what we call bitachon, his trust, his facing himself, basically, which is what he was doing, of facing his own, like, people telling him, you should be this, and you are, yeah, and all that. He's like, no, I have trust in one source, Hashem. No other source in the world is going to help me over here. Like everyone's a lot of people are well intended, but like when you know deeply, like this is what I need to do, and you do it, it's very hard, but then you bring about the results. And this is what I witnessed tonight by this wedding, that he, through his bitachon, he literally brought about his bride from, I don't know where she's from. Oh, I think she's from Brooklyn, not far from where he grew up, which is Brooklyn. And he came here to Tzfat, and who would have known that, she came from Brooklyn also here. Like things like that are so.
My daughter from Bat Yam flew up to surf in Costa Rica. She met someone there who lives 4 binyanim blocks, 4 houses from me.
Oh wow!
12,000 kilometers, and she got married with him.
Unbelievable.
So
Miracles happen when we trust ourselves, trust Hashem, and the only way to really trust is to be truthful with oneself, and to be completely truthful with oneself. Colleen, you're saying a strong sense of what our path is. So that is exactly very, very, very essential, because when people don't know their path, then even something as biology becomes like skewed, where people don't even know like the basics. And that's like kind of like what's happening really in the world today in many ways. So what's to be truthful with ourselves is what is our mission, and what is our purpose in the world. So in the book of the Ramchal, it says Yesod Yesodot ve'amud ha'chochmot leida sheyesh matzui rishon, right? In the Maimonides work, to know that there's a creator in the world, right? In Genesis, Bereshit bara Elokim, like when you know that there's a creator in the world, that is already putting you on the path. You're able to find your path in whatever job you take. You could be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a shoemaker, garbage man, a homemaker, whatever you're doing. If knowing that first thing, that's Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem. Knowing that is the beginning of it all. You teach a child that from the beginning, it's about God, right? It's about Hashem is watching you, loves you, you have a relationship. So you have that in front of you. Always Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. I have my path. So whatever path I choose, if I'm an artist, I'm a lawyer, so I already know my purpose. My purpose is intertwined with his purpose. And that is the most important thing. And that's where then we meet, where trauma now meets, like becomes transmuted, because now it's not about me anymore. It's about the creator. Because when it's about me, there's pain. And when it's about the creator, there's purpose. There's abundance. There's goodness. It's very hard. It's very hard to do that, but yet it's very easy. And it's that shift of perspective of taking that path, right? Of choice and choosing positivity more than not, like choosing to see the positive, choosing to see the good, the gratitude, because it's so easy to see the opposite, and that's feeding into the trauma. Oh, you know what? That happened to me because God doesn't really love me, or this happens to me, versus thank you, Hashem. Like, this is good. Thank you, Hashem. And when you're on that frequency, good things happen. You're going to meet the right people, right? Right? You meet, like, when you're on the frequency of positivity, then you're going to attract that. It's just like a fact, And so, and that's what the Rebbe was saying over there with the Hayom Yom. really, if we're reading that properly, because he says like when the brain, which is basically what he's saying, going back, referring back to Hayom Yom, Exodus from Egypt removes the constriction and bounds. The intellect in the brain illuminates the heart, bringing about fine character traits translated into actual practice. And this is avoda. This is work. And this is the work of coming out of Egypt. Exodus from Egypt removes the constriction and bounds, i.e., meaning the intellect in the brain illuminates the heart. The intellect in the brain illuminates the heart. In other words, my choice to see things in the positive, to see things in that way, illuminates the heart. And that brings about fine character traits inside of me to choose how I want to react, how I want to speak, how I want to think, right? The choice is that the type of people that I want to surround myself with. It's not a default, because if I surround myself with people with low frequency and negative energy, then that's going to affect me. But maybe we're stuck in that because it's a codependence thing. Maybe we're like used to, maybe we're like, maybe that's all that I deserve. Versus no, you know what, I deserve that, you know, and I'm gonna choose not to hang out with someone that's like a dirt bag.
Even if it looks very holy and it talks
Right,
very holy,
right, exactly.
you feel like
Yeah,
you go out,
yep.
you're like this and you say,
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks like he's giving, he's taking.
I personally made disclosure today. I made a certain decision not to go to a certain place to pray, and because for me, prayer is like I love it. I really do. It's my connection, and I feel like therapy. You meet God, and you know, and you meet yourself. That's the thing. You meet yourself, and but when you're in an environment where you're like trying to meet yourself, but then you're hearing all the other a lot of other voices and a lot of other people there, right? So what happens is that it muffles your ability to really listen into yourself. Muffles it makes a lot of metashtesh. Yeah, it takes away, right? And that's why, like, you know, praying in a minyan is very, very important, but also making sure that you have the time to connect individually, right? The Friedrich Rebbe says that there's a minyan inside of us, 10 kochos hanefesh. We have our 10 powers of our soul within us. 10 powers of our soul is our own minyan. In other words, it's
וואו.
that's what he says.
לא, אבל לא ידעתי שיש
The
מניין.
Friedrich Rebbe, that inside of us, we have the 10 powers.
So there is a room that if someone wants to pray only with his 10 powers, he can go pray in the little
Oh
room.
my God.
Not with
Well, but then also other people are there. But that's also why the Baal Shem Tov went out to the forest,
everyone.
right? Going out into nature. For me, going out into nature is an amazingly healthy thing. You're going out. We have nature over here. We just say, thank you, Hashem. You're going out there. You're speaking to Hashem. You're saying Tehillim. You're praying. And
You meet God
right.
when you're in the nature.
So we have to also realize, are we over becoming, I don't know the word, you know, it's like overly dogmatic in like the approach of like, well, it's like it's about the action and it's about the action, but that's also a form of slavery.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm not, you know, there's a serving of God that comes with joy. And if it's not coming from joy, then why is it not coming from joy? Is it coming because of you or because of the environment that you're in? Maybe two. And basically people stay in environments because they can't tell the difference. But once you're able to actually discern, you know, where he gives like the discernment, the binah, to be able to see a little bit forth. Exactly. The birds in the morning are like like it's night or day, night, and it's very fine. But then it fine tunes who we really are. And at the end of the day, that's what God intends for us to be. That's it. Not to be someone else.
Not to be perfect.
Right.
To be whole. Shalom.
To be ourselves.
Perfect, to be whole.
Even to be,
Shalom.
you know, they asked the Kotzker Rebbe, what is the most whole thing that you have? He says, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart.
Good enough. No, no more.
Well,
Well, this is because I have room for Hashem. Like,
then you have room for Hashem. Exactly. When you have, so, okay, that's already transmuting.
We
You
it's
have,
also a broken
great.
face, eh? It's broken face,
Yeah.
eh?
So you've
Better than broken heart.
you're on a different level. You've transmuted a lot, and you know, and so, but there is that place of there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. And while it's hard and sometimes it requires, you know, letting go and crying, right? It's part of it, right? And again, the Seder night, like there's that process and, you know, feeling. And actually, Tisha B'Av is always on the day of the same day that Pesach falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the highest day of like redemption is also, it's like, so there's the polar opposites. There's the polar sides of life, which keeps us kind of not about, it keeps us not about us, it keeps us about, or what it is, it keeps us within our perspective. It's the perspective, because you could look at Tisha B'Av as actually one of the highest days. It's called a Moed. And when the Beit HaMikdash is going to be built, it's going to be that really one of the highest. We're going to be celebrating that. So it's a shift even of how you're looking at mourning or negativity or etc. So simcha. So that brings us to simcha, because simcha is really that, because we could be happy right now. Like the only thing that's holding us back from being happy
Brain talking.
is ourselves. Exactly. Is ourselves. So simcha, you don't have like, but it's right here. And that ability to go out of Egypt is really the coming out of Egypt, like the deep level of that Chassidut talks about, right? Kabbalah talks about, again, Boel Paro, come to Pharaoh, facing that to transmute. And just one more point, we're not always meant to transmute and to go into every obstacle. That's also a very important point. Like some things is actually, you know, like I've decided not to go to this particular place to pray in, because I was like, you know, I'm going to have to like help change the attitudes, and I want to bring smiles to people's faces. And I was like, damn, man, this is hard. You know, I don't know, you know, so I was like, I'm feeling kind of drained, you know, this, you know, vibe. It's like, gotta bounce. And I was like, you know what, this is maybe not my thing. Like I have to concentrate on like my lane, like, okay, like this is my thing, for example, or learning, or like there's only a certain limited amount of energy that we have. So we can't be in places that will deplete us of what our real role is, which are sub or shadow, like shlichas, like, you know, like things that we're doing. But we have to concentrate on the main things.
Our role in the world is to spread love and simcha.
Right.
Happiness.
Right, but if an environment drains you,
Yeah.
then you're not right. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Don't face it just for the sake of facing it, because then you're being, you know, it's always putting on a hard hat. And I know people like that they will drill and fight until like, then I'm like, dude, just let it go right now. You know,
You mean
So-
not to give this my energy.
yeah, exactly. Not to give it the energy. Exactly. So, okay. So my blessing to all of us really is right. Today was Hilul of the Baba Sali and the Moshe Lev of Sasov. Some amazing tzaddikim energy. The whole month of Shevat is such a positive month. Wow. Thank you, Hashem. Shevat shenit baser b'sorot tovot. May we hear, may we get
שנייצר
good.
גם,
What?
שנייצר גם,
Yeah.
שנייצר בשורות.
So we've got so many good things that are happening in this month, and it's the month of tzaddik. There's a tzaddik channeling of goodness that we have inside of us. So may we, and according to certain tzaddikim, really so many good things come to us from this month. So many good blessings and abundance come to us from this month. So having that perspective is really coming out of Egypt, right? Coming out of Egypt to know that there's an unlimited source of goodness, Hashem, and we just see it that way, right? Yeah, you're welcome, Sally. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and wishing you all a beautiful month and beautiful new Shabbat, and may we all see that final redemption within ourselves and see it collectively. Okay.
You know, our slave